Tonight, my sources have confirmed that Jared Kushner testified last month in the special counsel's January 6th probe, questioned before a federal grand jury that is investigating efforts to overturn the 2020 election by Donald Trump and his allies. Kushner, of course, is Trump's son-in-law and was Trump's senior advisor in the White House. According to one source, the grand jury is asking whether or not Trump had been told he had lost the election. Back in 2020, in December, after Trump had lost that election, I reported that Kushner was one of several people who approached his father-in-law about conceding the election. Kushner had been in the Middle East and just returned to the U.S. the day of that Capitol attack. He later told the January 6th Congressional Committee he was at home when he got an urgent call from Kevin McCarthy.
I heard my phone ringing, turned the shower off, saw it was Leader McCarthy, who I had a good relationship with. He told me he was getting really ugly over at the Capitol and said, please, anything you could do to help, I would appreciate it. I don't recall specific asks, just anything you could do. Again, I got the sense that, they were scared.
Also tonight, I have confirmed that Hope Hicks has also spoken to that same grand jury. Obviously, she was incredibly close to the ex-president as his longtime aide and communications director. I'm joined now tonight by former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman and former Chief Assistant District Attorney for the Manhattan DA's office, Karen Friedman Agnifilo. Thank you both for being here. Karen, when you find out that Jared Kushner went before the grand jury, not investigators, which is what some people who have gone and spoken to Jack Smith's team have done, but he actually went before the grand jury in June, what would you have wanted to ask him about those efforts to overturn the election?
I think more than anything, you want to lock him into his testimony under oath. You want, before he has a chance to hear what other witnesses have to say, and before Donald Trump even mounts a defense, you want to lock him in. He was somebody very close to Donald Trump, and you want to know exactly what is he going to say and what is he not going to say. I think you're also going to want to know what are some of the things that Donald Trump said to him, and what did Donald Trump say about losing the election and January 6th, and there's several areas that Jack Smith can ask him about, but he was clearly a very close advisor. And when Bill Barr, for example, wanted to put a stop to these fraudulent, the election's been stolen, all these wild goose chases, he went to Jared Kushner and said, can you do something about this? And Jared said, yeah, we're trying.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was Bill Barr testifying to the January 6th committee. We actually have that moment. This was on November 23rd, so obviously after Trump has lost the election. And this is what Barr told Jared Kushner, or told the Congressional Committee about the role that Kushner was playing.
And as I walked out of the Oval Office, Jared was there with Dan Scavino, who ran the president's social media, and who I thought was a reasonable guy and believe is a reasonable guy. And I said, how long is he going to carry on with this stolen election stuff? Where's this going to go? And by that time, Meadows had caught up with me, and leaving the office, and caught up with me and said that he said, look, I think that he's becoming more realistic and knows that there's a limit to how far he can take this. And then Jared said, yeah, we're working on this. We're working on it.
Harry, given that, clearly they are trying to ask, we don't know how broad the scope obviously is, but they are clearly asking questions about Trump's mindset here.
For sure. And one of the things supposedly Jared said is he actually believed that Trump believed that the election had been stolen. It doesn't really matter, because we also have learned in the last few days that there are some very good statements, including one by Mark Milley and one by his communications director, that make it clear he knows he's lost. And that's what, sort of to Karen's point, that's what the prosecution will put on. And Jared, if he's a defense witness, they'll know what he's going to say. But I just want to say that I think almost as important as what we've learned that Kushner testified is what we learned about when it happened. We keep getting these little stones that carve off, but we forget Smith has a mountain of evidence he's assembled. And with Kushner, we have Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani, Kushner, basically everyone in the inner circle, including Hope Hicks, has now been to the grand jury. So everything there is to know about his mindset, they now know.
And so you're saying essentially that even if Jared Kushner did say Trump genuinely believed he lost, that wouldn't really be much of a defense, because there is this moment you're referencing when you say comms director, that's Alyssa Farrow Griffin,
right.
Also General Mark Milley, Cassidy Hutchinson, all acknowledging that at some point someone had acknowledged Trump had lost the election. So how does that work if that is a defense that Trump's team would be considering?
Even if he thought he had thought that the election had been, that he'd won and had been stolen, even if he really thought that were true, it doesn't give him an excuse to submit multiple false slates of electors, to pressure various secretaries of state to find votes and put in these fake slates of electors. Didn't give him the right to pressure Pence to, he's obstructing an official governmental proceeding. And those things aren't a defense, it's not a defense that, well, I thought I won. Also, the worst one of all is insurrection of violence. I mean, he does not have a right to do that. What he had a right to do was bring court cases, and he did. He brought, I think, 60 or 70 of them. He lost all of them, saying that the election, 64, there you go, saying that the election had been stolen from him. That's what he has a right to do. He does have a right to question it. But at a certain point, you can't then foment violence, which is what he did, and try to overthrow, the Capitol on that date, and to sit there for 187 minutes and, stoke the fire by tweeting things and not stopping things. I mean, he's still responsible. I mean, you want to show that he knew, but at the same time, I think it's okay. It's not fatal to Jack Smith's case.
And that could be questions for Hope Hicks. I mean, she was at the time, we were told someone that day reached out to her because she's someone who could talk to Trump in a way that very few other people could. So oftentimes, in the Trump years, when people wanted to get a message to Trump, they'd go through Hope. And that day, someone had texted Hope Hicks asking her to essentially get him to say something about being nonviolent. And she said that she had been trying to do that January 4th, January 5th. And then afterwards, she said, I'm so mad and upset. We all look like domestic terrorists now. What kind of questions would you have for Hope Hicks?
So you're always starting with what exactly did Trump say to you and did you say back? And you want evidence of mindset that goes the other way is always good, whether or not Kushner testifies against it. And Hicks is an important player because she's very loyal until the 6th itself, when she really is tearing her hair out and say, what is he doing? Can I make one more quick point about Kushner? Everything that Smith has been pursuing was sort of, we saw in the January 6th committee, with one important exception, the fundraising bit. That's his unique addition, and Kushner is all over that. There's an important phone call that Kushner initiates with Trump on it, and all the information about what kind of red meat charges can we make, how can we use the big lie to raise money. That is Kushner, and another person it is, Newt Gingrich, who also testified last month. So I think Kushner's presence there also shows Smith is pursuing that part.
Yeah, and Newt has testified. I think one thing we should point out, just for everyone who's watching, is just there is an enormous scope of the January 6th investigation here. We don't know that Trump is going to be charged. We have no idea. We know they're looking at the attorneys who were around him that day. They are asking questions about his mindset, but we still don't really have a good idea, to the best of our efforts, even though we've tried, what this could look like. Karen, on the other investigation, the documents investigation, Jack Smith's team did respond to this request by Trump's team, basically to postpone the trial in the documents case indefinitely. They ripped the reasons for that and accused the defense of giving a misleading picture of the amount of evidence. I mean, they still definitely want this trial to happen in mid-December. Is that likely?
That all depends on the judge. She has a lot of latitude and discretion as in terms of timing of when a trial goes. But yeah, that filing by Jack Smith's team is just a point-by-point teardown of the misleading points that were made by Trump's lawyers about just the volume of the evidence and how complicated this case is. So
they were essentially saying it's not as much as they're arguing it is. A lot of this is footnotes and headers and whatnot.
Exactly.
And so the other aspect of this is they were essentially saying Trump's team need to hurry up to try to get their security clearances, because I guess they're worried about what the delays here are going to look like. We know Chris Kise and Todd Blanche have now submitted the paperwork to obtain their security clearances. But what's your sense of all of this is going to Judge Cannon to make a decision here on when this is going to be.
That's right. It's a telling moment for her. They played what I think is a sort of ham-handed gambit of saying no date at all. She's got one date, and the United States went back on its date this time. Trump, for example, could have said, no, we need till March. But he didn't want to try to split the difference. It's really a maximum delay strategy. And if she permits it, if she takes it off calendar or says, well, maybe I won't decide for a long time, she is playing into his hands, and the heat on him will start, on her will start.
And quickly, is there any deadline of when does she decide? When do we hear from her? There's no deadline.
We'll get a real indication Tuesday at the hearing.